Romans 16, down through those first 15 verses or so, Paul begins this list. And he's writing to the church at Rome. We know that. He's been covering a lot of different doctrinal issues. And as he gets down to chapter 16, it's really a very personal passage, right? He's beginning to name people that have been a great asset to him in the church and in the ministry. And he begins to talk about some of the things that they've done and some of the things that are important, that they have contributed to the church and to the ministry and to his own needs, and how they have just a real benefit to the Lord. Isn't that great? These folks here at this church in Rome, their names have been captured for all of eternity in the Word of God because of the things that they did and the things they contributed. Most of them we don't know anything else about. We don't know anything else about them. We don't know who they are. We don't know anything about their lives. We just have a few words right here in the middle of chapter 16, kind of describing some of their actions in the church. And from that, we know a lot about their testimony and a lot about their witness. A couple here that were mentioned. Verse number 1, I mentioned, as I read earlier, Phoebe. Phoebe was a servant. I'm going to kind of emphasize that in the time that we have today. This is one who was a servant. This Phoebe was willing to serve, willing to get involved, willing to do the work. We see that again with verse number 3 with Priscilla and Aquila, my helpers in Christ Jesus. Verse 4, they laid down their own necks. Verse number 5, greet the church that is in their house. And so we see their hospitality that they had. We see the openness that they had. We see the risk they were willing to endure for the cause of Christ. They did a lot of things. I pulled out a little passage about Priscilla and Aquila. That's one that's always struck me. My mom is named after Priscilla here. And so Priscilla and Aquila, they were a hospitable couple who opened their hearts and home even at the risk of death. Priscilla and Aquila were close companions of Paul. They originally were residents of Rome, but the Roman Empire Claudius had all the Jews banished from Rome in AD 52. Priscilla and Aquila then moved to Corinth. They were the couple who opened their home to Paul when he first entered Corinth. They were also the couple who went into business with Paul as tent makers. They were tent makers with Paul. They later traveled with Paul to Ephesus, where they ended up settling. We see that in Acts 18:18. The chief characteristic of this couple was an open heart and an open house. Wherever we find them, we find that their home was a center for Christian worship and Christian fellowship. So just a little bit about this Priscilla and Aquila mentioned here in verse 3, 4, and 5. Faithful people, godly people, people willing to be not only opening their homes to a church meeting there, but helping Paul, traveling with him, doing whatever was necessary for the work of the ministry. I think these people sacrificed a lot, right? They sacrificed the own comforts of their lives and their home in order to travel with Paul, in order to open up their home, in order to do whatever was necessary to get the work done. These were faithful people here at this church in Rome. We can go down through there. There's many others. We see the very first convert mentioned there, I think I read at the end of verse 5. First convert. He was the first fruits. And so they talk about the very first person that made a decision for Christ. And boy, for missionaries today, that's so important, right? You go to a new field, you try to learn their language, you try to start a Bible study or a church, and the first person that you're able to reach for Christ, and you see them make a decision for Christ, that's a monumental thing. And Paul's mentioning that one here for this church as well. So here's my question. Romans chapter 16. Paul's writing down these faithful people in the church that had made a significant difference. If Paul was coming to Dillsburg and spending a couple months in Dillsburg, and he was writing the lost book of the Dillsburgians, or whatever they call it. I'm just trying to add like the Philippines. Okay, so we got the letter to the church of Dillsburg. Who would he mention? Who would be in the list? Who is it whose name he would write down and say, boy, yeah, that little Cedar Hill Baptist Church down there in Dillsburg, taking a stand for the Lord. Here's some people that are on there that are really making a difference. They are really working for the Lord. They're really sacrificing. Listen, last night, as I do every Saturday night, remember, I grew up in a pastor's home. And so I saw this growing up. And over the years, people have said, hey, let's do this on Saturday night, or maybe we can go out here on Saturday night. Saturday night for me as a pastor is a dedicated time of preparing myself for the next day. Saturday night is extremely important. When I was growing up, my dad would have dinner with us on Saturday night. Then he would get in his car and drive to church and work at church, which was only 5 minutes away. I don't drive to church, but I have a home office. And so after dinner on Saturday, I usually go to the office, my office at home, and start working and start preparing and start getting everything ready for the next day. And as I'm working on this lesson and on this sermon, which I had already outlined, but I'm just going over it and comparing the scriptures and praying down through the message and what we're going to talk about, the illustrations we're going to use, as I'm working down through the message, I thought to myself, I'm not the only person at Cedar Hill Baptist Church that's preparing and working tonight. There are Sunday school teachers that are going over their lessons right now. There are junior church teachers and truth tracker teachers and youth leaders that are working and preparing all of their lessons for tomorrow as well. There are people that are going to be singing. There are people that are going to be doing music. Becky Walker shared with me, Kelly got sick. Last minute, she got strep throat. Couldn't be here today. Kelly was supposed to do it. So she told Becky, fill in for me. By the way, it's Communion Sunday. There's twice as much to do, you know? But Becky's pulling out music and preparing. Last minute, she's preparing. She didn't know she was going to be ministering today, but she's ministering. She's preparing. She's getting things ready. She's practicing. She's going over stuff. People are going over stuff. People are getting things ready and preparing. I thought about that. I prayed about that. Because I prayed about you last night as I'm preparing my message. I'm like, I'm not the only one in the work of the ministry that's working on this. But there's a lot of folks that come to Cedar Hill Baptist Church that are just coming. They're just coming to get something. They're just coming to see what they can get. There's not a lot of... Went out to dinner with my wife on Thursday night. And we've done that the last couple of Thursday nights. It's worked out. We haven't had the boys as much the last couple of weeks. And so the last couple of Thursday nights, we went out to eat. And had some gift cards. People giving us gift cards. And so we're trying to hit some of these restaurants. And so Thursday night, date night, right? Desi and I are out to eat. We had a great dinner. But it's really a work dinner because we spent the whole time talking about church. I talked about that. I said, you know, Jesus told Peter, Peter, lovest thou me? Yes, Lord, Peter said. I love it. Then feed my sheep. Feed my sheep. So that's it 3 times. Feed my sheep. So, primary task of the pastor is to feed the sheep. But don't the sheep eat at different levels in their spiritual life? Shouldn't it be different as we grow in our spiritual life? Hebrews chapter 5. Hebrews chapter 5. Hebrews chapter 5. The last 3 verses, verses 12, 13, and 14. Hebrews 5, 12, 13, and 14. 5:12, for the time ye ought to be teachers, ye have need that one teach you again, which be the first principles of the oracles of God, and are become such as have need of milk, and not of strong meat. For everyone that useth milk is unskillful in the word of righteousness. He's a babe. But strong meat belongeth to them that are of full age, even those who by reason of use have their senses exercised, to discern both good and evil. Paul is getting on their case. In verse number 12 there, some of you, you're in a position, you should be teachers now, but you're still drinking milk. You should be teachers now, but you haven't grown. And he's prodding them. So listen, here's the message. If you want to keep track, I'm going to talk about this more next week. Next week, 15th year anniversary of me being pastor. You voted me in February 5th or 6th, 2005. So I'm going to mention that next week. But as I'm doing that, I've been writing things. What did I learn in 15 years of pastoring? What would I change in 15 years of pastoring? What would I do different? What do I want to see change in the years ahead, my years of pastoring? What is it? And so today is the last message of the first 14 years. And I'm stepping on toes, all right? I'm stepping on toes this morning. Bear with me. last night the boys came over. They weren't there all week. The grandkids were not there all week. CJ and Jamie's schedule allowed it that they had the kids all week. But they came over on Saturday. We watched them Saturday while CJ and Jamie went away. So that's unusual for us. We usually have them a lot more than that, but we only had them on Saturday. We watched them all day, and they went down for a nap, and I didn't really have dinner planned around them, and so I do a lot of the grocery buying and stuff like that at the house, and so Desi said, well, we need to give them something that they'll eat and is healthy. Like, well, that's a tall order, what's wrong with pizza? Pizza fixes everything, right? No, not pizza. Okay. So I ended up, we had ham steaks. Boys like that. I cooked up ham steaks. I made tater tots, not healthy, tater tots, and fresh fruit. We had a bunch of fresh fruit. And so that was my dinner last night. I'm going to make you hungry while I'm talking about this, but bear with me. So Mason is our youngest grandson. Mason turned 4 last week. And Mason's our youngest. And Mason was really excited about fruit. Mason was so about the ham. He'll eat it, but he'd rather just have cookies or something. And didn't want tater tots at all. Didn't know what that was, didn't want it. And so we made the ham, and I cooked the ham, and then I cut the ham up real small for him. It can't be something he'll choke on. It has to be real small. I know he's 4, he's pretty good at feeding himself, but we're careful. So we cut it up real tiny. Cut the skin, or rind, whatever you call that on the ham. Cut that off, because it's a little harder, and cut it up for him real good. I put 3 tater tots on his plate. 3, this is not a big, I don't care if he eats them or not because they're not healthy, but try them. Desi said try them, so we put a little bit of ranch dressing and ketchup on there, because if you dip it, it tastes twice as good. So try them. And then gave him some fruit, cut up the fruit, made sure it was applicable to him to eat, and so he's feeding himself, and he did really well. He ate that meal. It took, the preparation, we picked it right, it was just for him. Philip lives at home too, and a lot of times on Saturday night he's not there, he's out, he's working, or he's out with friends or something, but last night Philip was there. And so I knew that, and when I got done, I hollered up the stairs, Phil, there's food if you want it. Period. I didn't cut up Phil's ham. He's 27 years old. He didn't cut his own ham. I didn't take the skin off for him. I didn't try to get him to entice him to eat tater tots by putting ranch dressing or something. I didn't care if he ate it or not. Philip's 27. A lot of times he buys his own food. A lot of times he'll buy food for the house. A lot of times he'll buy things and say, hey, you should try these. Last week, Philip got his own Costco membership because there's things he wants to buy there. He's coming home with groceries from Costco because he's getting his own stuff. He's buying his own stuff. Over Christmas, Philip wanted to make babka. I didn't know what babka was. He wanted to make babka, and he made cinnamon babka, and he made chocolate babka, and he figured it out, got the recipe. He went out and bought all the ingredients. He asked when he could have the kitchen for a few hours. Oh, yeah, sure. And so the kids weren't there one day. He took the kitchen. He got the blenders going. He made all this stuff. When he was done, he gave us babka to eat. It was fantastic. He did a great job. So he's giving me something to eat. Listen to me. This was last night. And I'm working on this passage. At what point are we in the Christian life? Where are we in the Christian life? If you've known the Lord as your Savior for a long time, you've got to be past the milk. You've got to be past having your meat cut up. And the pastor trying to go, listen, come out. Listen to what I'm teaching on Sunday night. Come out. Listen to what I'm talking on Wednesday night. Read my blog. Watch my video. Come on. I'm trying to entice you. If you've been saved for a while, it's time to get into the meat of the Word. If you're saved for a while, according to Hebrews chapter 5, verse 12, it's time to be the teacher. Philip's 27. I'm not cutting up his meat. I'm not enticing him to eat stuff. I'm not doing that silly stuff. Why? He's a man. He lives in my house, but he's a man. He makes his own stuff. Sometimes he makes things for me to eat. I don't expect Mason to do that. He's 4. He's come a long way. Right? It wasn't too long ago we were heating up a bottle and making sure it's warm enough, right? Put on your wrist and give him a bottle. and moving to baby food, and sometimes, and CJ's sitting back there. Sometimes Mason's a character. Mason likes to get a little lazy. It's like, Mason, eat your food. I can't. You have to help me feed me. No. You're 4 years old. You know how to use a fork and a spoon. Feed yourself. And he will. He can do it. He knows how to do it. But he gets like, listen to me. I'm saying that as your pastor for 15 years. There are some folks that have come through Cedar Hill Baptist Church who come and go, Pastor, feed me. Feed me. And I think we're to the point where we need teachers and volunteers and workers and deacons and music people. We need people that are helping to prepare the meal and helping to feed other people. We need people to jump in and get involved. We need people to do more work. We do something very unique at Cedar Hill Baptist Church, right? I think you know this. This makes us really weird, right? You got one preacher. We got 150 people here on Sunday morning, and 200 people in our directory. And you got one preacher. So we don't have staff. We don't have other preachers to do this stuff. And I'm going to be honest with you. Rubber meets the road here, ready? I know we had some people leave our church last fall, right? One of the couples that left our church said, we're not leaving because of the problems. We're leaving because we are very, very needy, and we want the pastor to do more for us. That's what they were doing now. They've been saved for 50 years. I'm like, folks, it's time to get out of the milk of the word and get into the meat of the word. It's time to move from being a baby in Christ and saying, Pastor, what do you have for me today? And saying, let's get in and let's work and let's teach and let's do the work of the ministry. And I'm saying, when I was working over this last night, I began to think, there are people in our church that are working really hard tonight, preparing those Sunday school lessons and doing stuff. But there are people at Cedar Hill Baptist Church that are showing up saying, boy, I hope the pastor has something good. There's been a few times through the years, and I was guilty of this as a teenager too. I'm not picking on CJ, but I think there were times when both CJ and Phil and myself as a teenager would go to the pantry and open the door, and it's packed full of food, and we say what? Nothing to eat. Nothing to eat. It's full of stuff, You might have to make it yourself, but it's full of stuff, The freezer's packed full. Almost every week now I have to rearrange the freezer to get the door shut. It's packed full of stuff. We were so blessed in America. And yet we have a tendency to go, nothing to eat. Nothing. I've done that. I do the grocery shopping. I just said that. I go to the grocery shopping. I don't know how many times lately I've gone to the Giant, grabbed my cart, walked halfway around the store, my cart's empty. Why? I don't know what to get. What am I going to make today? What now? I don't even know. It's a giant grocery store. It's called Giant for a reason. It's huge, There's everything imaginable, and I don't know. But do we do that in our spiritual lives? Do we do that? Are we coming to church sometimes, sporadically maybe? Come to church sometimes and we go, I don't know, nothing looks good. I don't know. What's the pastor have? Hope he has something new. Hope he has something different. Listen, I'm prodding this morning. I'm pushing. I am. I'm poking this morning. I'm saying it's time to evaluate ourselves and say, are we still the one that's coming to church seeing if we can get fed? Or are we helping to do the feeding? Are we helping to move the ministry forward? Are we helping to feed others? I believe the church's primary job as a church, you ready, is to evangelize the world around us. So we should be bringing in new Christians and bringing in new families and bringing in people who don't know much about the Lord. And here we are. Man, it's my job. It's your job. We're to feed them. We're to help them grow. We're to help them learn. We're to help them get the understanding with the intention that they will grow and develop to the point that they go out and bring in others. It's a process. It's something we're supposed to be working on. And yet we have a tendency to have a bunch of people that, and not just our church, every church, that just kind of glide along. And so this morning, listen, I wrote all these lessons. Listen, if you want to start reading my blog, I don't think most of you do, but if you want to, I update a lot of stuff on there. One of the things I want to do better as I move forward as a pastor, one of the things I want to do better is I want to make sure our volunteers know how much I appreciate it. They're doing it for the Lord. They're not doing it for me, they're doing it for the Lord. But I go in there, I want to thank our volunteers, and then I want to thank them again. Because they're working, because they're doing the work of the ministry. But you know what? There's sometimes, and my wife and I talked about this when we left dinner at the restaurant Thursday night. There's sometimes we're tired. We're tired. Because there's a lot taking and not a lot giving. There's a lot taking and want fed, and not a lot of people picking up the load and moving it forward. I appreciate people who transition. I was thinking about this, and I have a lot I want to say. I don't have time. I was thinking about this. People who are willing to transition. I'm going to pick on him by name, but Brother Ken Deaver. Christmas time, Brother Deaver said to me, Pastor, I can't sing in the choir. My voice isn't as strong as it used to be. I can't do it. I've always sung in the choir. I can't sing in the choir. I said, I understand, brother. You know, as the Lord gives us opportunity, we do what we can. I didn't say anything else. Brother Ken came to me a couple weeks later. He's like, guess what? I've joined the mission committee. If I can't sing, I can help in the missions committee. I said, yeah, that's the right idea. That's the right spirit. You know, if I can't do that, I'll do something else. What can I transition into? Because there's work to be done. Not just inside, but there's a whole town of Dillsburg and a whole county of York County that, quite frankly, is going to hell because they don't know Jesus Christ. There's a lot of work to do, and sometimes we get so busy maintaining inside that we lose the evangelistic fervor of reaching out to the community. Because we have people that are so, the letter I got, we're so needy, Pastor. We're so needy. You need to be there. It's supposed to snow this weekend, they said to me once. And we don't want any water to get to our basement, so we want you to come over to our house and dig 10 feet around our house to keep the snow away from our house. I said, that's not my job. We're leaving church. They said, we're leaving. You don't help us. Listen, folks, the world's going to hell. There are people that are dying without Jesus Christ. They have no clue what the answer to life's problem is. We have it. There's work to do. We can't have people who are just literally sucking the milk from the ministry, that want more. We want more stuff from you, Pastor. We want more stuff from you, church. We need more help. You don't care enough. You're not visiting me enough. You're not seeing me enough. You're not, listen to me. Paul is prodding them, saying, get to work. Move from the milk to the meat. There is work that needs to be done. Don't stay and languish. Move forward. Listen, I know that's not my usual message. I know it's not. But listen to me, there's a time that the pastor has to say, come on, guys, let's go. There's a time that the coach has to sit the team down and say, guys, we're not playing up to speed. There's a time that the general of the army says, come on, guys, we got to get ready for battle. And the bottom line is this. Week after week after week after week after week, people are coming to me in the church saying, my marriage is falling apart. My home's falling apart. My wife just filed for divorce. I can't even begin to tell you how many of these folks in our church. And you know what? A lot of those are sporadic Christians. They come from time to time, and they're not ingrained. I'm like, you never moved from the milk to the meat. You never really committed your life to Christ. You're just borderline Christians, and there's so much to do. Christ is coming back. The ladies just sang it this morning. Jesus is coming again. He's coming. We're expecting him at any moment. And time is running out. The clock is ticking. The sand is going down through the sand timer. We better be ready. Let's pray.